Story 1. My parents' old house was an extremely active home, a few stories of many. Hi all. First time sharing these experiences. This is the only place I've ever experienced paranormal activity up close, and it was non-stop for a while. While I can't guarantee it is related to ghosts, it was definitely something. Here's some brief important background info. For about 12 years my family owned a house on a hill, in a spread-out neighborhood in northern Nevada. The house was actually the highest house in the small valley and was somewhat remote. The layout of the house is important, so please bear with me. The building itself was bizarre, as it was built into the slope of the hill. It was technically 3 stories, as the bottom level was half underground. We called it the basement, but I guess it wasn't. That's where my bedroom and the laundry room was. You entered the house from the second level, kitchen, dining and living room, and on the third level was 2 small bedrooms. The first occurrence was when I lived there alone. My parents had purchased the home but couldn't make the move for a couple of months. I was watching over the place and helping them with getting the bottom level livable. It was concrete and exposed drywall at this point, but I still chose to live down there. One night I was camped out and watching TV when I felt a strange sensation, as if there was a lot of static electricity in the air. I remember literally watching my arm hair stand up. I saw something in my peripheral and looked up to see the bedroom door sliding closed. Not violently, but slowly. Again, this was an old sliding wooden door, one that slides into the jamb wall. No explanation like a possible draft made any sense. It was jarring, but I wasn't all that scared. I was so new to my surroundings that I was just frustrated that I couldn't figure out the cause. Through all my experiences in that house, I was rarely outright terrified. As the family got settled into the new home, there was a period of frequent activity, weird noises and misbehaving electronics. My family was myself, mother and stepfather. My older sisters would live there on and off, and one of them was there for the next major event. Late one night, I heard a sudden and somewhat violent commotion upstairs. Directly above me was the kitchen, and anything happening in there was always obnoxiously loud, even just someone walking. The tile in the kitchen and general acoustics allowed for some really annoying sound travel. The sound carried so well that whenever I heard footsteps, I could tell which family member it was up there and what they were doing. If one of our dogs was in there, I could literally tell which dog it was by the little tippy taps. I often caught them in the act of stealing food, generally misbehaving this way. It was incredibly irritating. This particular noise sounded like 2 large men wrestling. It was loud. I heard a chair drag, and 2 distinct massive individuals literally fighting, rolling around, etc. It went on for several minutes. My parents were out of town, but one sister was also home. Her bedroom being directly above the kitchen. My first thought was that my sister must have had friends over and that they had a few drinks and her guy friends were horsing around. I was livid and called her up to chew her out, only for her to answer and ask what on earth I was doing that was so loud. We both worked up the courage to meet in the kitchen while staying on the phone. The lights were on, and no one was in there. Everything was neat and in order. The noise only stopped when we neared the kitchen. This had gone on for so long that we had plenty of time to contemplate what it could be while it was still happening. She ultimately stayed in my room that night. The next incident was really 2 incidents. My mom found a dead little bunny on the porch. The only unusual thing about it was that it was placed evenly on the doormat and had no obvious injuries. We have dogs, but they didn't have access to this area. My stepdad is a sweetheart and actually buried it. Here's where it gets weird. About a week later I was chatting with my mom as she took a break from her schoolwork. She had been using her 1st or 2nd gen iPhone to utilize the dictionary, thesaurus website. This was before iPhones had voice command capabilities like nowadays, so the model is important. As we chatted, her phone went to sleep from inactivity. At some point, the phone lit up and the page she was on refreshed itself as if someone had put in a new search query. We both saw this happen and no one was touching the phone. We were obviously distracted and watched the phone to see what it was doing. The page loaded and in the thesaurus search bar was rabbit killer, with obviously 0 search results. My stepdad, an IT guy, tried to convince my mom of a technical reason for this but later told me that it wasn't actually possible and he didn't know how it could have happened. iPhones were a little more primitive back then, no Siri etc. For months we endured random noises and doors closing. So often that we actually got kind of used to it. It rarely felt hostile, and when it did feel hostile, it strangely didn't feel directed at us. It was like some spiritual shit was going on and we were just in the wrong place at the wrong time and happened to witness it. At a certain point, it did seem to take notice of us, and when it did, it really did. This is the last major incident that I will list here. One night, my parents claimed they woke up to the dogs growling on the bed. They both sat up and flipped a lamp on to find me standing over their bed. My parents both wear glasses, but they aren't blind and it's hard to mistake me. I'm about 6 feet 3 inches and tower over the family. They tried talking to me, but got nothing in return. They were convinced that I must be sleepwalking, despite having no history of sleepwalking. They said it was actually funny, and they were amused by trying to wake me up. This thing eventually wandered off after studying them for a few minutes. What they didn't know was that I was not home that night. I was crashing at a friend's house. The next day they were cracking up telling me about my bizarre behavior in the middle of the night. I honestly debated not even telling them that I wasn't actually home the previous night because I didn't want my mom to flip. She took it well, but I can't tell if she believed me. Some notable details: the house is near a reservation, although I'm wary of assuming anything about a culture that I'm not a part of. We are all white except my stepdad, who is Native American. This is also an area where people claim to see a lot of UFO activity. In fact, this part of Nevada in general is hot. It's considered to be a hotbed for paranormal energy in general. If you made it this far, thanks for reading. And if anyone has experience about whatever that thing was that was mimicking me, I'd love to hear more.
Story 2. Male voices chatting. So this story isn't very scary, but my family and I, 41, found it entertaining. Already before this happened, my mom and I were sometimes called the family witches, more as a funny comment. So that weekend, my family met at my parents' place. My husband and 3 kids, my sister plus husband and daughter, and my brother. By the way, my parents bought the house almost 40 years ago, and I think back then it was a fairly new house with only one pre-owner. Except for my brother, who lives a couple of streets down, we all spent the night at my parents' house on the upper floor, after a nice day with barbecue and chatting and having a good time together. The larger room upstairs used to be my room when I was younger, and the 5 of us slept there spread across 3 beds. Everyone was in bed and asleep already, but I could not sleep. I heard 2 men chatting and it kept me awake. It wasn't loud. I could not make out what they were saying, but it was clearly a conversation of 2 men. So thinking it must be my dad and brother on the porch beneath one of the windows, I decided to check. I opened the roof window a bit and expected the noise to become louder. But nothing. No one was outside. I also checked the 2 other sides of the room that had windows, but opening them did not make the voices louder or clearer to hear. I only heard them when the windows were closed and the outside night noises were quiet. So my next rationale was that someone left the TV on downstairs. I opened the room's door. As the house's floor plan is very open, you can hear everything from downstairs when you open the door. But it was quiet downstairs. I went downstairs to be sure, and everything was quiet. No one there, everyone sleeping. So I went to bed and eventually fell asleep. The next morning I came downstairs to a nice family breakfast, but was still quite tired from the short night. When I was asked if I didn't feel well, I told them the story. My dad shook his head in disbelief and in German said "STH like, not again," laughing at my mom. She immediately said, "See, I told you, I am not imagining this." Turns out my mom heard these voices a few times already, but my dad brushed it off as nonsense. She was excited to be validated by what I heard. She had never told us about these voices. No one else heard them except for her and now myself. Seems like a rather new development, as we grew up in the house and never heard anything. They all found it very entertaining, a bit spooky but not scary.
Story 3. Black cat in my closet. Something about the closet in my room is weird. It's always cold. Even if it's 100 degrees outside, it's freezing in there. My parents said that it used to not be that way until after the various renters had moved out and my family moved back and noticed it was that way. This happened to me when I was around 5 years old. I woke from a sound sleep and immediately got out of my bed and walked to my closet. I opened the door and turned on the light switch, and I saw a black cat sitting on the floor looking up at me. I was so surprised to see a cat in my closet because my family only had a dog at the time. I sat on the floor and started to pet it, and the cat was meowing and purring while I pet it. I was super excited and poked my head out and called my parents saying, "There's a black cat in my closet, come quick." My parents came to see what I was talking about, but when I poked my head back in to show them the cat, it was gone. I never saw the cat again, but several family members have also experienced paranormal things in that room.
Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.